Today, I want to tell you about a version of midlife nobody prepared us for. Not the one with the sports car and the dramatic reinvention, but the quiet one, where everything looks fine on the surface. You're functional, maybe super functional. You're showing up, you're meeting your responsibilities, but internally, something fundamental has shifted, and you can't quite name what it is. If that's where you are right now, if midlife feels different than you expected it would, this video is for you. Because I'm going to tell you why it feels like this, and the answer isn't what most people think. But before I tell you my story, I want to be clear about what we're discussing today. This isn't just my experience. This is a pattern that developmental psychologists have studied for decades. Erik Erikson called it the shift from generativity to integrity. The period where we can stop asking, can I achieve this? And start asking, was this worth achieving? What I experienced was the forced visible version of what many of you are navigating invisibly. And my story matters not because it's unique, but because it does reveal the pattern. The pattern of what happens when the life you built in your 20s and 30s suddenly stops fitting who you're becoming. When the identity you constructed to function in the world begins to feel like a costume you can't take off. So this is both a personal narrative and a clinical map with my story and the framework that helps make sense of what you might be experiencing. I know this version of midlife because I lived it. I was 35. I had just walked across the stage to receive my master's degree. This is the culmination of years in the military to afford education, quitting smoking, training for a marathon, becoming a vegetarian, and the healthiest version of myself I'd ever been. I had finally arrived at the version I'd been working toward since I was a teenager. 2 days later, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And when I was diagnosed, my neurologist said, "You'll be in a wheelchair within 10 years. In that moment, everything changed, and I didn't see it coming. My first response? I am not proud to say that I left his office and bought a pack of cigarettes and said to myself, it all to hell. Because if doing everything right didn't protect me, what was the point? That's what midlife does. It disrupts the fundamental belief that effort equals outcome. That if you work hard enough, make the right choices, follow the rules, you'll be safe. You won't. And that realization, that's what makes midlife feel the way it does. Not the specific event, but the shattering of the implicit contract you thought you had with life. For the next 5 years, I tried to force and think my way through it. Positive mindset, holistic protocols, discipline, and willpower. I was going to prove that neurologist wrong. I had been a strict vegetarian, then switched to paleo when I heard about nutritional research. I followed every protocol perfectly. And for a while, I thought it was working. But something was happening that I didn't understand yet. One of the medications I'd been prescribed off-label was causing a rare reaction. Over the course of 18 months, I became unable to eat. Everything I consumed, except bone broth and kombucha, caused severe pain, and I withered away. Doctors told me I was anorexic or drug-seeking as the pain in my body became worse. Because from the outside, my commitment to health looked like an eating disorder, but I wasn't restricting. I was starving. I love food. If you're experiencing something similar right now, medical symptoms being dismissed, your reality being questioned, this is real. And you deserve providers who believe you. And I kept believing that if I just tried harder, followed the protocols more strictly, stayed disciplined, I could fix this. I almost died from that belief. And I need to say this clearly because some of you might be in a version of this right now. If you're pushing yourself past what your body can sustain, if you're telling yourself discipline will solve what actually requires help, please stop. The willpower that served you before can become dangerous during certain transitions. What I'm describing almost killed me. And the only reason I'm here is because I finally surrendered to what I couldn't control. There came a point where I was working in a back brace and using a cane to support myself walking. The last year of my practice, I also passed the national licensing exam while my body was failing, while hunger was running through my veins every moment of the day. And I kept showing up, seeing clients, serving my community, being the strong one, until I couldn't anymore. In December 2016, I had to close my practice. For months, I found myself alone, withdrawn in a basement garden room, trying to gather fragments of who I'd been and figure out who I was becoming. This withdrawal wasn't depression, though it did become that. It was what psychologists call necessary regression, stepping back from performance to discover what's actually true. But for me, it required one thing: knowing it was temporary and knowing I would emerge. That room, I can see it today, saved my life. Not because it was comfortable, but because it was the first place I stopped performing. If this story is resonating, if you're recognizing pieces of your own experience here, you might want to save this video, not to watch again right away, but to have when you need the reminder that what you're going through makes sense. I had to do something I thought was betrayal. I had to surrender everything I believed about healing, accept pharmaceutical intervention after years of holistic commitment, admit that willpower wasn't going to save me. And when I finally did, when I finally accepted help in the form I'd been resisting, life came back. One cell at a time, and I could feel it, the literal sensation of nourishment reaching tissue again. Energy returning, not all at once, but measurably. And I learned something crucial, something that changed everything about how I understood midlife. You can't willpower your way through an identity transition. So why does midlife feel like this? And here's the honest answer. Midlife isn't just a crisis. It's a forced audit of everything you built in the first half of life. Sometimes that audit happens gradually. Sometimes it's forced and visible, like mine was, by external circumstances. But the underlying process is the same. In your 20s and 30s, you were building a career, building relationships, building a version of yourself that could function in the world. And that required a certain kind of forward momentum, a willingness to push through doubt, to ignore discomfort, to keep moving. But somewhere between 35 and 50, that building phase completes itself. Not because you've arrived, but because the questions change. It's no longer, can I do this? Can I build this? Can I achieve this? The questions become, do I still want this? Does this fit who I'm becoming? What was I building this for? And those questions don't have quick answers. They require something our culture is deeply uncomfortable with: stillness. And here's what makes it harder. This isn't just psychological. Between 35 and 50, research shows your brain continues developing, not declining, but developing. Priorities shift, values reorganize. What motivated you before stops working. Not because something's wrong, but because you're capable of more nuanced thinking, more complex decision making. For me, the shift was forced visible by a medical diagnosis. But most people, you're navigating the exact same internal reorganization, except it's invisible. There is no diagnosis, no external validation, no moment someone says, yes, something fundamentally has changed. Just this persistent sense that you're still you, but you're also not the same person you were. And you can't explain it to anyone because from the outside, nothing looks different. But inside, everything is rearranging. This is why midlife feels so disorienting, because you're living in two timelines at once. Externally, you're still functional, still showing up, still meeting responsibilities. But internally, you're in the middle of an identity transition you didn't choose and can't control. And here's what almost no one tells you. That split, that living in two places at the same time, that's what exhaustion actually is. Not doing too much, but being in two versions of yourself simultaneously. One that the world still expects, and one that's trying to emerge. If you've been feeling this specific kind of tired that rest doesn't fix, if you've been wondering why everything feels heavier, even though you're doing less, go ahead and tap the like button. Not for me, but as a signal to yourself that yes, this is what I've been feeling. And also as a way for others here to know they're not alone either. Here's what I learned the hard way that I want to save you from. The strategies that worked in your 20s and 30s, hustle harder, optimize more, think positively, push through. They don't work during identity transitions. In fact, they make it worse because they're strategies for external achievement. And what's happening at midlife is internal reorganization. You can't optimize your way through an identity crisis. You can't willpower yourself into clarity because what researchers call identity transitions require a different kind of work, not achievement work, but integration work. You can only stop interfering with the process that's already happening. So, what actually helps? Not mindset, not discipline, but psychological flexibility. Psychological flexibility is the ability to stay present with what's actually happening instead of fighting reality or rigidly clinging to how things should be. It's not about thinking positively. It's about responding skillfully to what is. For me, that meant accepting that my body had limits, that my values could stay constant while my methods had to evolve, that I could value health without running marathons, that I could be a therapist without seeing 30 or 40 clients a week, that thriving didn't mean returning to who I was before. It meant building a life that fit who I was becoming and who I am today. Same values, different methods. It's not compromise, it's wisdom. 15 years later, I'm not in that wheelchair, but I'm also not the person I was at 35. I don't run anymore. I ride a horse. I don't work 60-hour weeks. I see a handful of clients and cancel when I need to. I don't push through fatigue. I plan around it. And here's what I've learned. Thriving doesn't mean everything goes back to normal. It means building a life that honors who you actually are, not who you thought you'd be. If you've made it this far, I'm curious. What brought you here today? Was it the sense that something's shifting and you needed language for it? Or are you further along, already navigating a transition you didn't see coming? You can share it in the comments if you want. I'll meet you there. Not because I need engagement, but because sometimes naming where you are helps you see it more clearly. And it helps others here know they're not alone either. I started this channel because I've walked through the forced version of what many of you are choosing. Identity disruption, reconstruction, living inside uncertainty while building something new. I'm Jessica. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and someone who's walked the territory nobody prepared us for. Not as a guide who's figured it all out, but as a companion who's walked the landscape and knows it very well. Everything I share here comes from two places: clinical training, frameworks from psychology, philosophy, and research, and my lived experience. 15 years of navigating a transition I didn't choose, but had to learn how to live through consciously. This isn't the channel where I tell you to think positively and everything will be fine. This is the channel where I tell you the truth. Midlife is hard. Identity transitions are disorienting, and there's no shortcut through the uncertain middle. But there is a way to navigate it that doesn't break you, that builds integrity, real integrity from the inside out. If having a place to return to while things are still unfolding, while you're figuring out who you're becoming, helps you feel a little less alone, subscribe. Everything here is for this season of life, where clarity matters more than striving, and truth matters more than comfort. I don't have all the answers, but I can offer company and frameworks that help you think more clearly about what you're experiencing. So you don't have to navigate this without language, without context, or without understanding that this is part of something larger. So if you're in midlife right now and everything feels different, if you can't quite name what's shifted, if you're functional on the outside but rearranging on the inside, you're not broken, you're not behind, you're not failing at some invisible timeline. You're in the middle of becoming yourself, consciously, and for maybe the first time. And that is where you are supposed to be.